Hello FPL managers and welcome to Gameweek 4's team preview with me, James, and as always I'm joined by Ben Dinnery, injury guru. Ben, you described, I won't use the exact words you used before we started recording, but you said this had been a difficult Friday for you. Why is that?
Challenging. I've got 122 players there or thereabouts, either flagged as absent or potentially missing this weekend. Throw in red list, amber list, quarantine, FIFA 5-day rule, suspension, rest, fatigue, injury, suspension, and it just becomes a little bit of a minefield to try and navigate through. So
it's madness. You had your international break and it sounds like it hasn't really been a break at all for you.
It's never a break because we track players regardless all over the world, and it's in some aspects it's actually even more difficult because trying to track players in some of the far-flung corners of the earth and getting information and finding out what's going on can be quite difficult.
There is no break for Ben Dinnery. That's the moral of the story here.
Nah.
Guys, we are, as this video is titled, going to be looking at predicted lineups for Game Week 4. We're recording on the Friday afternoon. Have all the press conferences finished now, Ben, or are there still a couple more?
Not all of press conferences done and dusted. The only potential updates that we'll have between now and maybe deadline would be any of those quotes which have been embargoed by the press until late 10:30 on Friday night. But I do have some Arsenal news which we can touch upon when we go across that. I've just spoken to the club, so that literally is hot off the press.
This is brilliant because, Ben, we always start with Arsenal. We do go alphabetically in this video. And viewers, in case you're wondering, the article that we're using here is a Fantasy Football Hub members exclusive article. It is constantly updated. So as Ben said, there will be news coming in later this evening. There may be news emerging early on Saturday as well. This article is the place to find the latest up-to-date news. So do go and check it out on fantasyfootballhub.co.uk. If you're a member, you get access to all of it. If you're not a member, you get access to about half of it. Okay, we'll be going through it today. Ben, let's start with Arsenal then, shall we? You've just spoken to the club. Do you mean you've literally just had them on the blower?
An email. Not direct, so I've had an email. We are in constant communications anyway. So we heard from Mikel Arteta on Thursday. Generally great news in terms of the treatment room. Only 2 confirmed absentees, which was Mo Elneny and Granit Xhaka, who is in his homeland after testing positive. But there were 2 question marks with regards to the availability of Kolasinac, who picked up a knock playing for his country, and Emile Smith-Rowe, who was released from the under-21s due to illness, not COVID related. Both of those players have trained today, are fully fit and available for selection.
Oh, that won't be music to Norwich fans' ears, I'm sure. But good to hear that Arsenal are on the mend. They've struggled in the first 3 game weeks with injury crises. So that's what that's what an international break can do, can't it, Ben? Much need to be said about Aston Villa at the moment.
Again, another club who've got massive issues. Not necessarily in terms of who's come back. We know Buendia and Martinez are out. They're quarantining currently in Croatia. Could be back in Game Week 5, hopefully. I suppose some of the headline grabbers, maybe Leon Bailey is the best place of those players coming back. We also seen the return of Ollie Watkins in Game Week 3, but that was to the bench against his former club. He's got another 2 weeks training under his belt, so I might finally get my 4-4-2 at Villa.
He's been a thorn in your side. Aston Villa playing Chelsea in the Saturday evening kickoff, so a lot of people probably either getting rid of assets, like if Ings, of course, is very he's on the transfer out list at the moment. Maybe if you own a defender, you'll be benching them as well. But interesting to know that Watkins could make a return. Hard to imagine Chelsea conceding, though. Let's look at Brentford, who play Brighton, of course. We can kind of cover those perhaps in the same breath, Ben, because conveniently they are next to each other in the alphabet as well. Not much change here by the looks of things.
Yeah, I mean, there was one change last time out for Brentford, and that was the late absence of Frank Onyeka, a positive COVID test. He's been past fit and he will be available for Thomas Frank, so that's good news in that department. A lot of talk at Brighton with regards to Tariq Lamptey. Of course, Graham Potter said he's been progressing and he featured in an 11v11 internal game over the break. That led to speculation that he could be available. That won't happen. Brighton say that he's going to be targeting the Carabao Cup later this month. Solly March past fit, but again he's only had a couple of days training under his belt, so he's probably going to start on the bench. That's why we've looked at leaving Jakob Mulder in that squad, depending on if he's come back, you know, from that midweek international fine. The issue that we've had with a lot of press conferences and managers this week is just at the time players hadn't been fully assessed. So we're trying to read between the lines and we're trying to sort of guess and interpret the information that we've got to hand. But those assessments will probably and likely continue all the way up until team sheets maybe need to be submitted.
Okay, interesting one to keep an eye on then. Burnley. Ben, I'm going to breeze past Burnley if you don't mind, given that I'm fairly confident not many FPL managers own Burnley assets at the moment. Apologies if you're one of those waiting to hear updates. But again, they look fairly unchanged to me. Let's move on to Chelsea, though, a team that lots and lots of FPL managers have their eyes on. And it's mostly because of that man up top there, Romelu Lukaku. He's in your starting 11, Ben. Does that mean there's been an update?
Yeah, I mean, long and short of it, Lukaku has been managing an ongoing thigh problem now for a couple of weeks, so nothing new in that regard. He put the cat amongst the pigeons after playing for Belgium when he talked about going for a scan just to make sure that everything was all right before he returned back to London. That's come back all clear. He has trained for the last couple of days without any problems. What I would say is, given the fact that he is managing this problem and Chelsea now go into Champions League action, it is possible that Thomas Tuchel may look to manage minutes, you know, with 3 games over the next sort of 7 to 8 days, whatever that may be. And he does have a lot of strength and depth in that Chelsea squad, but I certainly do expect Romelu Lukaku to start.
Okay, good to hear. And that really does throw a spanner in the works as far as, especially for those wildcarding, the Lukaku-Ronaldo debate wages on. We'll get to CR7 later on in this video. Crystal Palace, again, don't want to spend too much time here. Ben, do you still have Benteke in your team?
Yeah, well, obviously we've seen, you know, Palace had a decent transfer window. This could be the last roll of the dice for Benteke. I think Patrick Vieira will just go on those trusted lieutenants for this one game week, and then maybe from game week 5 onwards we'll see those new signings potentially coming into the squad. Another of those being maybe Will Hughes. I was sort of toying whether he could come in for Jeffrey Sloop, who picked up an injury playing for Ghana, hamstring problem, but I think MacArthur may just get the nod in that one.
Okay, thanks for that. Everton, and again, it's the centre forward that most FPL managers are focusing on ahead of game week 4. Calvert-Lewin, we saw pictures of him in training, Ben. Is that usually a telltale sign that things are all well and good?
It's certainly a good indication. It's a positive. It doesn't give you a definitive answer in any way, shape or form. And also, it's Friday, and Everton don't play until Monday night against Burnley. So that would be the worry. There's still 2 days of training to go. What we do know is, first and foremost, he was managing that ongoing toe problem, a cracked toe. That limited his training and probably had an impact on why he pulled up last time out against Brighton. Whether that was through fatigue and he felt the problem in his quad, or through an altered gait, just a slightly different way of running, and that's putting additional strain on his muscles. But yes, look, he's back, and that's a good sign. We just have to hope that he comes through these next 2 training sessions unscathed, and I fully expect him to lead the Toffees line if he does so.
Okay, good stuff. What a plum fixture that would be on that Monday night against Burnley as well, who have looked very leaky in the first 3 game weeks. Leeds United. Now, I'm really interested in Leeds in particular, Ben, because of Rafinha. 16% owned. Of course, the latest, as far as I'm concerned, is that he will not be eligible to play in game week 4 due to a FIFA 5-day ban. Do we have any news on that front?
Look, this is honest. This could go to the last moment. What we do know is, and there's positive speed taken maybe from the Paraguayan FA, the Mexican FA, who've both come to agreements with Premier League clubs, Newcastle, Miguel Almiron, Wolves, Raul Jimenez. They've come to an agreement where they will withdraw their complaint and those players are available to play for their respective clubs. Discussions with the Brazilian FA continue. So as it stands, yes, they're not available, but there's still hopeful that the clubs say common sense will prevail, and there's a possibility that, you know, the likes of Rafinha and those involved at Manchester City and Liverpool could still be involved this weekend. So this starting 11 at the moment reflects the news that they're not eligible. But again, keep your eyes and ears peeled ahead of deadline, and those could change if news breaks maybe later tonight or early tomorrow morning.
FIFA and common sense don't always go hand in hand, Ben, so let's see.
Well, I mean, the Premier League is awash with money, so who knows? Who knows what a few quid, you know, could loosen a few pockets and, you know, open a few doors.
We shall see.
We shall
see. Let's move on quickly. Yes, Leicester, they play Man City, so not the most popular game week 4 side for FPL managers. Looking relatively unchanged there, Ben.
I mean, Ayoze Perez remains on the sidelines through suspension. Yeah. The big boost is the return of Yannick Vestergaard and Johnny Evans to that Leicester training. Brendan Rodgers said neither will be 100%, so he's unlikely to throw, you know, both players back in. Suggest maybe one, that could be Evans. The other big bonus is the return of Ricardo Pereira, who was forced off at Carrow Road, I think, after supplying that assist for Jamie Vardy in the opener. But James Justin and Wesley Fofana are the two long-term absentees. The rest all on the road to recovery.
Yes, Fofana. We all miss him. He was a very popular pre-game week 1 pick until that. I think it was a pre-season friendly, wasn't it, Ben, in which he was injured. Huge loss for FPL managers and of course Leicester themselves. Liverpool, and here we see again the absence of Brazilians acknowledged by Ben here, particularly between the sticks. That could be a huge loss for them if Alisson is indeed out. Firmino may not have found himself in a starting 11 anyway, with Jota doing so well. Anything else to mention here, Ben?
Yeah, just Van Dijk's been cleared after picking up a knock playing for the Netherlands against Turkey, so nothing new there. Harvey Elliott could see himself back in the starting 11. Of course, he was released from England under 21 due to muscle problem, but he's absolutely fine. Elsewhere, I mean, Firmino, he's carrying a hamstring issue, so wouldn't have been involved regardless of this 5-day rule.
There was some rumour about Shimikas potentially regaining his starting berth, what with Robertson's international duty in Scotland. Is there any credence to those rumours, or are they rumours?
I think it's the Twitter rumour mill, isn't it? I mean, ultimately, you kind of totally rule things out, especially ahead of Champions League and with games. But you know what? Premier League is always the priority. You start with your strongest 11, and yes, Tsimikas has been great during that interim period, but ultimately you cannot bypass what Robertson's done for the last few years in that Liverpool. So
unfortunately,
not for me.
Unfortunately, because what a bargain asset he was. Okay, Manchester City, and again Carson between the sticks rather than Edison there. Will that change pre-game week 4 deadline? We'll have to see. Torres in as well. That will be a relief to managers who have bought him in. Many managers bringing him in after his great haul in game week 3.
There is concern. I have heard murmurings about minutes for Torres and with his involvement with Spain. Of course, if he wants, Pep could stick somebody like Raheem Sterling up there as a false 9. But for me, I think Torres deserves a start. Pep has been eulogising about the young striker. The only worry would be that, normally when Pep starts the big players up, you tend to see them on the bench the next game. So fingers crossed that isn't the case this time around.
Pre-game week 1, Ben, there was plenty of talk about Kevin De Bruyne and Phil Foden, who ended up being ruled out for the first 3 game weeks. We're now at the point, perhaps, where we need to start considering those two once more. Do we have any update on the two of them? Yeah,
we've seen Phil Foden actually training outdoors on sand this week. Good for proprioception work in his foot, the stabilising muscles of the of that lower limb. So that just gives him better feedback. That indicates that he's not quite ready to return to first team action just yet. I'd also, err on the side of caution in terms of why rush him when there's absolutely no need, particularly when we've seen a setback for Kevin De Bruyne. De Bruyne is well placed to return to the team. He's been taking part in individual and team training sessions, both with the first team and with the under-18s over the break. So it wouldn't surprise me if he was named on the bench this weekend.
God, imagine being a 16-year-old trainee at Man City and you're having to play against Kevin De Bruyne in your training sessions. Wow, that must be great and also incredibly intimidating. Manchester United, and the question on every FPL manager's lips ahead of Game Week 4 is, will Cristiano Ronaldo start? He starts for you, Ben.
He doesn't this because I just can't hack the backlash. I mean, look, the honest opinion of myself, and I've said this since Monday, by the way, I said that he won't start, if the truth be known. And the reason, and this was just an opinion, which is why I've had him in the starting 11. There's no doubting the guy's quality. There's no doubting that he's fit enough, he can produce. I'm just looking at the aspect of United have 3 games this week. He does have limited time with the team. United playing quite well. The absence of Fred and may work in his benefit if Pogba has to drop in, or maybe he's a 6-6 alongside a Matic, with McTominay also being out. We know Bruno starts. We know Sancho probably starts being cleared, and Greenwood has to start. So, that for me, that leaves one space up. Now, that depends whether Ollie wants to go with CR7, Cavani, Martial, Pogba, if he wants to change it up defensively and hide Van de Beek in there. Look, there's lots of options. I've probably sat on the fence a little bit and went with Ronaldo in this instance. But it really is a coin toss, and I don't see any guarantees whatsoever in CR7 starting.
I mean, this ambiguity is the last thing that FPL managers wanted. We were hoping for some sort of clarity from Solskjaer in the press conferences, and Ben, he basically did the opposite, didn't he? And kind of cast as much doubt over it as possible. He said that Ronaldo would feature in that Newcastle game. The question that FPL managers want answering, of course, is will he start? And that's where it remains ambiguous. So Ronaldo expected to score his first FPL point for some time, but will he get 90 minutes?
I mean, against Newcastle, I think it's second lowest XG conceded. Even if he's got 5 minutes from the bench, he's got a chance to get a couple of goals on his belt. So
he doesn't need many opportunities, does Ronaldo? I think we can say that much for certain. Okay, well, thank you for that, Ben. We'll have to see. I've got him in my wildcard team. Despite the Lukaku news, I think I'm going to keep him there. And I'll just hope that the poetry of football ends up working in my favour and that Solskjaer gets overwhelmed by the occasion. Right then, Newcastle. I hate to break it to you, Ben, but not a huge amount of eyes on Newcastle ahead of this week. I do want to quickly acknowledge the absence there of Wilson. What's the latest with him?
Thigh problem, played through game week 3 with a problem from around about the 10th, 11th minute. Fortunately, it doesn't look as if it's a hamstring, it's the front of the thigh, the quad. The concern is that Steve Bruce isn't willing to give any kind of definitive time frame on a potential return. He's training in the gym at the moment, so he's away from the main group. He's not even outside. It could be 2 to 3 weeks. It may even be after the next international break. We'll just have to wait and see.
Huge blow for your team, Ben. That must be gutting for Newcastle fans. And FPL managers, because he was growing in popularity, that's for sure. Norwich, I'm going to breeze past Norwich, Ben, if you've got no debate, and I live in Norwich, so I'm allowed to do that. Southampton, they have a challenging fixture, I suppose, in West Ham. What's the latest with them, Ben?
I fancy Southampton to do all right, me. I do that. I've actually tipped them. I've tipped Adam Armstrong as the player, as a surprise little sneaky differential Dinnery captain option this week. The two sort of players which have been added to the treatment room, as it were. Theo Walcott, minor muscle issue again, but hasn't been in the starting 11 in recent games. Shane Long picked up COVID while away with Ireland. Stuart Armstrong, there was a chance of him potentially returning, but his calf issue was taking a little bit longer than initially hoped to recover from, so he is also out of the reckoning.
As I always remind FPL managers, can't really find much better than Ben when it comes to injury news and predicted lineups. When it comes to FPL tips, we recommend you take them with a pinch of salt. This is a man that's owned Benteke for the first 3 game weeks and has just backed Adam Armstrong as a differential captain. I'll leave you to interpret whether or not you want to follow that advice. Okay, Tottenham Hotspur, and the big news coming out of Spurs is we think, absence of Son. Again, a huge blow for them. Ben, he doesn't make your starting 11, so this is potentially more than just a kind of international break injury.
Yeah, I mean, the difficulty, as always, and we talked about it at the head of the show, is understanding exactly what's going on in the far-flung corners of the earth, and this words getting lost in translation. Reported on Monday that Son had picked up a complaint of discomfort in his calf after training, but he was removed from the game purely as a precaution. Now, coming back to England, Nuno didn't sound very happy. He said it doesn't look very good, although he refused to sort of speculate further until the player had any kind of further assessment. But, reading between the lines, and given the fact that we're still talking about a soft tissue, muscle tear potentially, then even a 5 to 6 day turnaround is very short, given his travel. So certainly for this game week anyway, I'd be very, very surprised if Son was anywhere near that Tottenham squad. And like I say, reading between the lines with Nuno, it could be a little bit longer.
It's annoying, isn't it, that we have to read in between the lines with managers these days. I bet you wish you could just get some opaque answers now and again. Frustrating. Anyway, let's move on to Watford now. And again, don't want to spend a huge amount of time on these guys, Ben, but there are a couple of wildcarders bringing in Watford assets. Any surprises that we should be preparing for?
I wouldn't say a surprise. Francesco Serralta is one of those guys who's with a 5 day rule, so potentially his availability hangs in the balance. João Pedro, he's back on the training pitches. He's a player that comes with a lot of potential, done well in the Championship, so there's a lot of hope and expectation for him. Maybe a few eyes watching him, maybe not for this game week, but going forward. Kiko Firmino, people keep on mentioning, I'm not really sure why. He had a groin issue over the summer. He's working his way back to full fitness. That's why he hasn't been in and around that first team squad.
Well, guys, if you're watching this and you have Firmino in your side, I would love to know why. Do comment below, because, it is quite perplexing to me as well, Ben, I've got to say. All right, West Ham, and looks like a clean bill of health for Moyes' men.
Yeah, the only concern that they had was Arthur Masuaku, but he's had 3 games now for the development side, the under-23s, so no issues with regards to that. I mean, David Moyes did talk about managing Mikel Antonio, but he firmly believes that his hamstring problems that have hampered him over several seasons now, he believes is in a much better place, but obviously understands that there are going to be occasions where the striker will need to be rested. Otherwise you're pushing him potentially into that red zone and at risk of suffering another setback.
And that would be the last thing that FPL managers would want at the moment, hasn't he just been phenomenal? Okay, Wolverhampton Wanderers to finish it off, and look at that, Podence back in the side at the expense of Trincao. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Jimenez in there as well, Ben. There's been a bit of news on that front, hasn't there?
Yeah, we talked about it before. Wolves come in agreement with the Mexican FA regarding his non-release, and therefore that complaint was withdrawn and he's available to play. I have made a couple of changes to this Wolves lineup. Bowley coming into that backline in absence, in place of Max Kilman. it's difficult because we've said Bruno Lage, the new manager, hasn't had an opportunity to see Willy Bolly in full flight. So I took a little bit of a punt on that, maybe based on what we've seen over previous seasons. But of course, new manager, new philosophies, a new take on things, and he may prefer to go with Kilman over Bowley, but it's, Bowley is fully fit and available.
Okay, Kilman is actually in my wildcard draft, so this is good to know. The fact that even if he does start in game week 4, the fact that he maybe is the most dispensable of that back line is valuable. So, Ben, thank you so much. That was fantastic. It's an incredibly difficult week, as we said at the start of the video. Incredibly difficult week as far as injury doubts go. So, Ben, appreciate you're a very busy man on this Friday afternoon, and thank you for giving half an hour of that to the hub. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, if you appreciate the effort that Ben goes to, please do consider dropping it a like. And like I said at the start of the video, do remember to keep your eye on this document. It will almost certainly be updated between now and the Game Week 4 deadline, so keep your eyes peeled. Keep your eyes peeled as well for next week's video. We'll be back ahead of Game Week 5. Hopefully, Ben, it'll be a little bit easier than this post-international break Friday. But something tells me that you're still going to have your work cut out.
Of course, mate.
You always do. All right, Ben, thanks a lot, mate. Have a good Game Week 4. Good
Cheers,
luck.
James.
I'll be looking out for Ben Teke. Hopefully he can finish on a high.
Bang. Double figures.
All right, mate. Take care. Thank you. Thanks for watching, guys.
Cheers,
Bye-bye.
matey.